The past civilization that I researched on were the Aztecs. The Aztecs would use the method of chinampas to grow their food. Chinampas is a method of ancient Mesoamerican agriculture which used small rectangular areas of fertile arid land to grow crops on shallow lake beds in a valley of Mexico. The French would use the method of bio-intense gardening. French bio-intensive gardening is the raised beds that are used in this style of gardening. The beds are large. They are also double dug, which means that the soil is worked twice the usual depth. Grow bio-intensive compost increases the amount of carbon stored in the soil, reduces the amount of water needed to grow crops, and increases the yields for both food and compost crops. Similarities between the chinampas is that they are grouped up and produce 2 to 6 times more than the normal gardens. The chinampas are different from the French bio-intensive gardening. The same crops are planted together in squares and filled with water. The French bio-intensive gardening are different because they plant them in rows and mix the plants so they could pass on minerals and nitrogen to other plants and don't use much water. Social impacts are that they could feed more people because they would produce 1 to 3 times more food. Environmental impacts are that they would use a lot of water to water the chinampas. Economically, they would use food to sell or trade with other people. French bio-intensive gardening social impacts is that they could feed more people because they grow 3 to 6 times more than normal gardening. Environmental impact is that they would use a little bit of water because plants are put together so they could share minerals and nitrogen so they could grow. Economically impact is that they sell the food. The chinampas were a great way of growing crops and was one of the greatest ever. So by that it means that even though the method of chinampas was slow process, it was sustainable because it would rain a lot, so then the rain would help the crops grow and they would produce 1 to 3 times more food. The French food production was sustainable because they would produce 2 to 6 times more food and build the soil up to 60 times faster than in the nature. They would use 67 to 88% less water than conventional agricultural methods. The problem in the food production I participated in was that when we would water the plants, not all of them would get an even amount of water. I participated here for the food production, and this is how it looked before we pulled out the plants and planted new ones. The first thing we did was to dig around the plant in order to pull it out. Different tools were used to pull the plant out. After a while of digging, we finally took the plant out. And this is how it looked after we pulled out all the plants. We put fertilizer in the dirt after taking the plants out. We used a rake to spread out the fertilizer around the dirt. We dug holes to plant our plants by using shovels and other tools. After we finished digging the holes, we planted the plants. We planted 5 plants in the hole we dug. After planting all 5 plants, we watered all the plants. And this is how it looked after all the plants were planted and watered.